Welcome to Black and Blue, the podcast that's just for you. We bring solutions to everyday problems. We are here to humanize the badge. By interviewing first responders and discussing their trainings, experiences, and publications. Black and Blue airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in.
The federal corrections. There I started off as an officer. I started at the ground level, at the very foundation of that organization. I became an investigator over the inmates. I became a lieutenant. I ran a internal affairs department for a couple of years. And then the current role I sit in right now is I run the training department.
Got it.
Well, I'm going to go a little further back to my childhood. And for me, we grew up with nothing. There was times where we didn't have electricity. We didn't have a place to stay. For the longest, I thought trash bags were dressers because that's what I knew. Wow. So when at 19, when I was in college, I mean, obviously I was on my own, but ramen noodles was a meal. Hot dogs were a meal. Chicken wings, spaghetti, anything that was heavy in carbs. We had Wing Tuesdays at Buffalo Wild Wings at the time when I was 25 cents. Everything you think of. So I think for me, I just had a survival mindset at that point. Right. When I became a police officer, it wasn't like that mindset turned into, hey, let's go get it. It was more like, let's keep surviving. Let's keep going. So like you said, the shift work, I mean, being a police officer, you know there's shift work. Being Border Patrol, there's shift work. Me starting off in corrections, there was shift work. It wasn't until when I became an internal affairs investigator where I had more of that 7:30 to 4 assigned shift, but you called it after hours, you get called on the weekends. That's still not there. But for me, it really hit home about 2021. And that's when I had actually, I was in my investigator role. Actually, I was in my training role at that point, and I was just in my house, like in the house I'm in now. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I just accepting things as they come to me? Like, where does this come from? And then I just realized that I was still in that survival mode from back when I was a kid, back when we were moving every year and we were struggling. So for me, I was like, you know what? I have a great, amazing government job. They pay me every 2 weeks. I'm cool. Right. But what I realized is that I wasn't using my gift, because what people don't realize is I started my speaking business in 2017. So I had a speaking business going now. It wasn't profitable, by no means. It definitely, but I was speaking a lot in 2018. And then when I moved to Texas, I kind of stopped because I was like, oh, I'm too busy. 3 years later, from all of 2018, I probably spoke about 10 to 15 times, a lot of pro bono, a lot of just learning my craft and seeing what was going to work. Right. 2019, I spoke once. 2020, I spoke 0 times. 2021, I spoke 0 times. Wow. So over a 3-year period, I spoke 1 time. Right. And then I was just sitting there in the summer, and I was looking at everything that I had gone through. And then I started looking at everything law enforcement was going through. I mean, we all know what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd. Right. All of us know it, whether you were brand new to law enforcement today or you were a seasoned veteran for 25 years, everybody knows what happened. And then I started to see the burnout of my peers. And I started to see how suicide rate was impacting us, because before that wasn't really important to me. And it just wasn't. I mean, I'm not going to lie to people. I mean, that just wasn't on my radar. Right. It was just that moment of, Clea, it was that moment of reflection. I was sitting here, I was like, what am I doing? Yeah. Like, I'm literally in my, and mind you, my life was great. I mean, I was smooth as far as financially, my relationship with my son's great, my family's great, but I was just sitting around. I was like, what am I doing? And then it hit me. I said, I need to learn more about self-awareness. And then I start looking the concept up, and I found a book by Tasha Eurich called Insight. And she's a big author, big speaker on self-awareness. Okay. And as I looked more into it, I started looking at the statistics and the numbers, and I always thought I was self-aware. I thought I was like, you know what? I know Michael Laidler. I think everybody right now, if I told you to raise your hand and it was 100 people, if you said, hey, do you know who you are? Probably 90% of the people are going to raise their hand. Exactly. But statistically, only 10 to 15% of those people actually know what makes them happy, what their purpose is, like how to be great continuously. Why? Like, how do I have thick skin? Like, how do I learn that? Oh, well, you just go to more calls. That makes it worse. Yeah. Like,
You're
it's
adding
like
trauma on top of trauma.
yeah, like you're literally, you hit the nail. You're adding trauma on top of trauma. You're never learning how to grow from it. You're not learning how that actually builds you. And
Right.
for a lot of us, and still some of us till this day, that's what we're doing. We're just adding trauma after trauma after trauma. And we're not realizing the impact it has until we're in our 50s, our 60s, and we have high blood pressure, or we have headaches or migraines, or we're just angry all the time. We've been through 34 divorces, whatever it might be. And we're like, how did this happen? Well, it's because that very first trauma you had when you were 19, 20, you never worked on it. So as it built, you didn't know how to release it. You didn't know how to move away from it.
Right.
And because of that, you find yourself going back and forth with this level of disappointment, anger, and really you're just suffering for no reason. I can hear the frantic sound of the people inside. As soon as I got through the door, like as soon as my foot, like if this was back here, as soon as my foot crossed that threshold, somebody handed me this lifeless baby that was maybe 3 to 4 months old. And all I could do was look at the baby. All I could do was look down. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, what am I? I mean, in the academy, I mean, they teach you how to scoop something out of the baby's mouth, but you could see in the baby's eye. I mean, CPR, they show you how to do that stuff, but I was like, what am I supposed to do? And you hear all the noises going on, and my partner and I were just like, I don't really know what I could do. I mean, I'm here. I'm here to provide something. I don't know how long it took, but fire department showed up. They bust through the door. You know how they come through the door. And they did. They came through that thing hard. I can tell you that. And they came. They took the baby out of my hand. The same look I had, they had looking at the baby. They're doing CPR. They're doing whatever they can. And needless to say, at the end of the day, the baby did not make it. If you had 100 officers, let's think of a very basic number. Let's say, you know what? Let's even go more simple. Let's say you had 10 officers. Okay. And you offered this training program that helped them be a better person, a better father, a better mother, a better brother. If you can keep 2 of those officers 6 months longer because of that program that you spent a small amount of money on, because I promise you right now, if you spent, let's say, $2,500 on a training program, that's a lot cheaper than not having an officer in that spot for 6 months and then going through the hiring process. Because in one, let's say a month, you're going to spend more than $2,500 on overtime. Let's call it what it is. So if you can keep those 2 officers in place because you spent $2,500 on their growth, from them to be in a training program, they're going to stay, and you're going to help them build on a skill that they need to get to. And a lot of times people don't know what they want.